If you could go back and talk to yourself during that time, what's some advice you'd give yourself?
Be more intentional about what you're doing and when you're doing it. I always felt like I've been tapped to be a leader, but I just knew if I just kept running and I didn't stop and then the product did what I needed to do, I could sell it. Are you willing to be part of something bigger than yourself?
I actually heard Dabo Sweeney say this. It was something like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, the janitor's just as important as me.
I read a book by a pastor out of Atlanta, and it's all about how God has a specific vision for our lives.
At what point did you have that aha moment of this is going to work?
It's like, all right, if we get 20, 30, 40, 50 customers first year, at least I can eat. Now it comes to the decision of what do I do?
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Successful DNA. Here I have my friend Matt DiBlasi with me. He has the office right down the hallway, been a buddy of mine since we moved to Florida in 2017. Founder and owner of Abyde, a HIPAA compliant software. Matt, what did I not cover? And welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate you having me. I think you forgot about all my athletic accomplishments.
Florida State's finest.
A few decades ago.
Yeah, Florida State. The bullpen, the greatest bullpen arm in Florida State history.
I threw a lot of innings in the bullpen, that's for sure. Way more than I threw out on the field in a game.
For people that don't know you, go ahead and give the brief 30-second of who is Matt DiBlasi.
Oh, man. I'm a follower of Jesus, first and foremost. I'm a husband. I'm a dad to two beautiful girls, ages right now 4 and 7, about to be 5 and 7, which is crazy. You know how quickly that goes. But I'm obviously a business owner, like you said, and just trying to live out God's calling on my life, not screw things up, and ultimately just keep my priorities in order and see what God has in store, because He's already blown away my expectations. I'm sure we'll get into the story, but there's really not a whole lot of reason for me to have the business accolades that I have at this point. So just really try not to screw it up.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, let's go back, kind of to around college. Like, what inspired your transition from being a Florida State pitcher, to pursuing a career in business?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't think I ever had like the desire to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't a student. I mean, definitely didn't list any of my academic accomplishments for a reason. I joke, I graduated with a 2.17. So school wasn't something from college. So school wasn't something that I really took seriously. I always thought I was going to be a pitcher in the big leagues, right? We were both going to make it and play in the big leagues. And there's really no plan B to that. So it was tough. I think a lot of people struggle with that transition of going, being an athlete, having your identity in something, and then that's taken away, and you're kind of like, what's next? And it wasn't until a buddy of mine really invited me to move my life to New York when I was 25 years old. I was working here in an indoor hitting facility, giving pitching lessons and hitting lessons, and not a career for sure by any means, but just in that stage of life, like what's next? And buddy that I play with invited me to go work for his dad and him up in New York. And it was really, that was the first time where, he presented the opportunity, if things go well, we'd have an opportunity to lead the business, run the business. And I think the idea of maybe not working for somebody else was intriguing, and maybe having the freedom of, implementing things and doing things a certain way, or holding myself and others to a certain standard that you maybe just don't get when you're an employee other places. And so, it was really just an opportunity. They didn't really offer me much else other than that. And, at 25, moved my life to New York, literally in boxes that most of them didn't show up because they got lost, and I had bags get lost on the way up there. But quite a story. But like in a room probably about this size, right, about 15 by 15 or whatever it is. Him and I, my buddy and I, lived in his office because we had just gotten done playing professional baseball, didn't have a dollar to our name, definitely didn't have enough money to get a place in New York. And so that was it. But it was really, it was that grind of seeing, hey, there's a potential here of us leading one day, but you got to put in the work now to do it. That really got me thinking, like, man, what if one day, what if, we were able to run this thing and I was able to lead, I was a captain in college, and I always felt like I've been tapped to be a leader, not necessarily in the business sense by any means, but, that started to come together right around that time. And, all the steps thereafter, tell the story of how we're sitting here even today.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
That I moved to New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's the only time I got to shower, because we didn't have a shower in our office, was there was a gym next door. Actually forced me to go. I didn't work out half the time, but it forced me to go.
Yeah. At least walk past the treadmill.
Yeah. So where'd you go? I was just at the gym. Yeah. Just getting my shower in. But yeah, I woke up. I remember eating. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any. I don't think we had a refrigerator. Maybe we had a mini fridge. But like, you wake up, there's nothing to eat for breakfast. So I walk down in the Mobile at the end of the street, the gas station, and get my little, Lucky Charms or Cheerio bowl and my milk, and kind of had enough for each day. Right.
There you go. That's all you need.
That's all you need, man. That's all God gives you sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, like those things will never get lost on me.
If you could go back and, at Florida State, as you're playing baseball and being a college athlete, if you could go back and talk to yourself during that time, what's some advice you'd give yourself?
Oh, man. Take it more seriously.
The baseball or the academics? Or both? Definitely the
Probably
baseball.
both.
Or the partying.
That was the problem. That was taken too seriously. That was like, I joked that was kind of my major at the time. But yeah, I think just being intentional about what I was doing. I don't have any regrets by any means, but I know like by my senior year, there's a little bit of burnout with baseball. And so it was one of those things where you kind of start dreading going to the field, and you dread going to practice, and dreaded going on road trips. And you look back and it's like, man, those things were fun. Those were buddies that, lifelong friends that I'm still in touch with now, that are brothers. Those were memories that or moments that I think I wasted at the time. So to like be more intentional about what you're doing and when you're doing it. Right. I think I just kind of went through the motions a lot, and, in this school, I don't have to work hard and I can still be productive or successful on the field. Whereas like, man, what if I would have worked hard, really hard? What if I would have taken it really intentional? Like, what if I would have taken it seriously, played with a guy, most people know Buster Posey, right? Like there's a reason why he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, it didn't just happen overnight. And there's a difference between guys that like him and his work ethic and then guys like me. So yeah, just be intentional about it.
I love that story about you. Going back a little bit, like, what parallels do you see between the teamwork like needed on the baseball field and that you created, and being a captain at Florida State, and the collaboration required like in building a company?
It's the same thing, like, and I know you deal with it on a daily basis as well, but how do you galvanize people to be part of something bigger than themselves? Right? Like, I think in the past we've made the mistake. We've hired for talent and not the right people. Most talented team doesn't always win, right? Like, the best team wins. And so that's one of those things where, we've realized over time that the right people in the right environment will get the maximum results. And that's the same thing, on the baseball field. I didn't throw the hardest. But I played my role. Right, I was a left-handed reliever. Like, I knew my role. My role isn't to start and go 5 innings. Got to pull the string every once in a while, keep people off balance. But like, I knew my role, right? And you have to have role players. You have to have people that are open to that, and that can acquiesce when they need to acquiesce, and listen to coaching and open to feedback. For those that are part of our team or ever been part of our team, they really understand the similarities and the comparisons I draw in sports to what we do on a daily basis. Because it's one and the same. So like, I learned a lot, obviously, through growing up and playing sports that has prepared me for this. But yeah, there's so many similarities, the ups and downs of winning and losing and overcoming your challenges and picking, somebody up when they, maybe if you lose a team member, people got to step up, and who's the next person to step up. The similarities are endless, and ultimately that's what makes a good team and a good company, or having those little things that you do really well as a unit, not individually. One
thing I thought of when you were talking about, not necessarily regrets in college that I regret, I would like to see how you feel about this, is like, I think I didn't realize, like, if I could go back in college, like probably the only thing I would do different is like gone above and beyond and work my butt off to build a better network. I didn't know anything about, your network's your net worth, and building a network, because you could have built, so many more relationships with professors, or, the successful parents of teammates, or, just, working the room around. Like, that's one thing I probably regret.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know, at least for me at Florida State, I think it was cool to be an athlete that didn't need anybody else. Like you want to be the guy that everybody looked at,
yeah.
right? And, you kind of just see how like other athletes, especially football players at the time would carry themselves. And, it's like everybody needs to serve me, and, like you need me. And I agree. I think when I'd look back at myself, I was very much about me and not about other people. And to your point, the best way to even serve you is to serve other people, right? Because it is going to come back around for you.
Yeah.
And I think about that. There were so many doors I tried to open when I left Florida State using, hey, I was at Florida State, you try to throw that in there, like to try to create relationships, when at the time I could have done that when I was in the position, I agree with you.
I think too, when we're talking about kind of, building the team, and like, we've hired probably like 60 people in the last like 12 to 18 months. And I don't hire anymore. By the time it gets to me, it is strictly gut, and, I'm looking to see who you are as a person. I asked one main question, and I mentioned it on the podcast before, but what drives you? And I want to know what drives people, because that is what I think separates the, especially on a team inside of a business, the successful individuals from the non-successful. Are you going to go above and beyond? Do you want to go above and beyond to be successful, or do you just want to, do what it takes to get by, get your paycheck, go home, watch Netflix? Are you going home? I want you to go home and build a side business for yourself. Like, I hope you come to home team and grow to a point that you can leave and change the world somewhere else.
Love it.
So, hiring policy these days, what do you look for?
Man, that's a great question. I think we've talked about it in the sense of just like, are you willing to be part of something bigger than yourself, right? Like, can you humble yourself in certain situations? Can you take on a role, in a larger operation? Can you work in a group, work as a team? Like, we're very much a unit. And I just want our team to be working together. Yeah. And so, I think that's the biggest thing is just, how do you work with other people? Because we collaborate on everything. Like, nobody's sitting in a corner in our office, with their AirPods on, and you don't hear from them all day. Like, people are constantly moving around. And so, nobody hides, on our side. And so, it's just like, how are you working as a team? I
think what's important there are two things. One, there's got to be steps in a business that people can take, and they don't feel stagnant. That's one thing we tried to do here, is we created multiple verticals of businesses that, people can cross-train and people can move up in businesses, and, even if they're different businesses, move up. And then two, like, especially with our business, and definitely yours too, like, say, for example, one of our businesses, B&B Construction, okay, where we're doing construction projects across the country, from our general contractor to the bookkeeping team, and everybody in between, if one of them doesn't do their job, it screws up the whole entire company. With our vacation rental company, if the guest messaging team isn't performing, well, we're going to get bad reviews. The revenue is going to get hurt. It's not just revenue based off of, I hope our sales team's doing good and bringing on new properties, right? It all ties in together. And I think I actually heard Dabo Sweeney say this. It was something like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, the janitor's just as important as me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Try going and, if this office was a freaking dump, like, people would perform less. Yeah. And so, all right, let's make a transition from your college playing days and you're growing up. Let's go from New York, from in between that and the creation of Abyde. Was that, what age did you leave? So you went to New York 25.
25, went to New York.
How old were you when you started Abyde?
32.
All right, so those 7 years, what was that like?
Yeah, moved to New York, didn't know anybody, which was actually a breath of fresh air. I look back, I was nice not knowing anybody, running into anybody when you go out, although I do love people, but no, that was cool. And so just a new experience, right? Like Florida boy in New York, and just put my head down and worked. Like that was all I could do. It's all I had time to do. Like there was really nothing else to do other than work. And I just knew that opportunities would present themselves. But, we had partnered, the company was an IT company. We had partnered with an EHR company in the eye care space. And they were just the biggest and the baddest in the eye care space. At the time, their software needed hardware to be run on inside the medical practice environment. And so we sold the hardware. We didn't sell the software, and the software sold the software. They didn't sell the hardware. So we were a great, partner for them. And they would post-sale, their salespeople would send them over to us. And this is back in 2009, 2010, when there was this boom around electronic medical records, and there was a government incentive program that was part of that. And so we just really got caught up in that. And so for 4 years, I kind of led that project of helping eye care doctors get their software set up all across the country. And, ended up working with a couple hundred doctors' practices over the course of the couple of years. And it was like 2012, 2013, they started coming back to us asking for help around HIPAA compliance and audits. And so we just kind of looked into it at the time and saw a great business opportunity. And started just consulting with our customers, and didn't really think too much of it in terms of trying to scale it and grow it. We thought the IT business was our core business, and it was just one of those things. The more we looked at the opportunity behind HIPAA compliance, there was little to no help for smaller independent practices out there. There was just a great business opportunity. You look at the market, where the future was and where it was going to go, and the lack of maturity within the market. And so we started capitalizing on it. And right about the same time, my wife and I had gotten married in 2013, now 2014.
Do your parents still pay her?
That's a whole nother story. Yeah, God put some blinders on her for sure. Well, I'm appreciative of that. But we had just got married, and it was like 2014. I read a book by a pastor out of Atlanta. His name was Andy Stanley. Or his name is Andy Stanley, he's still a pastor up there. But the book was visioneering, and it follows the story of Nehemiah. And it's all about how God has a specific vision for our lives. I never knew that. I just never knew that growing up. I thought maybe my vision was baseball, right? And so I'm reading this book, and I had this just overwhelming feeling in me that just welling is probably the only word that I can describe it. It's just this welling and this emotion and this desire to lead a company one day and to honor God with it. And I'm like, this is my vision He's given me. And so it took a while. It took a lot of conversations with my wife and a lot of praying, but it's like, okay, I'm buying in on this. I don't know. I'm working for this company out in New York. I'm more or less a sales rep, doing a little bit of leading, but I'm also a player.
You and Megan got married in New York, and you were living in New York?
We were living down here at the time,
okay.
So I was able to come back. I can't stand those winters. But I was, working for the company in New York, living in Tampa at the time. And I just couldn't let this vision go. But what was in my mind at the time was that it was going to be through the IT company. That makes sense. I'm already in this company, my buddy and myself, we're kind of talked about leading it one day, and this is what God is talking about. So it's all right, now I'm kind of all in on this HIPAA and IT thing. And they hadn't given me any equity or anything like that at the time. And this was 2014, but we started building our HIPAA business. And the problem was it wasn't scalable because we were consulting, right? I was literally physically sending technicians on site to medical practices across the country to execute. Just not a scalable model. In my mind, there was something easier, better, like a TurboTax for HIPAA. And obviously now I look back and I see that was God planting that idea in my mind, because that is what is Abyde today, right? And so it took 2 years. It was 2016. I've been sitting on this idea for, TurboTax for HIPAA compliance, right? A really easy to use software that takes care of HIPAA compliance. It replaces the technicians we have to send out, minimizes time, reduces costs, everything that you want. It's a software, annual recurring business. I'm like, this thing could be huge. But then again, I had 2.17 coming out of Florida State. So everybody's like, oh, you got a great idea. Why don't you go do it on your own? I don't know finance. I don't know operations. I knew I could sell it. I knew what the software needed to do, how it needed to look, how it needed to feel. But there was so much I didn't know about business. My buddy and his dad at the time didn't want to invest in the software. Things were going well with the IT company. And so I was just stuck in this spot of, how many people out there have $1 million idea and then never act on it?
Yeah.
I just kind of thought, hey man, that would be a cool idea one day. I'm sure somebody will do it and I'm gonna be jealous because they'll make a lot of money and they'll be successful. And then God put me in contact with my now business partner, they were family friends, him and his wife at the time, family friends. Just like God does, wasn't expecting to have a conversation in his garage that night about business. We were just going over there to see him and his wife and their new baby girl they just had. And he starts picking my brain about this idea. And hey, man, like, what do you need this software to do? And how does it need to, what type of modules? And conversation moved into his home office. And ultimately, I woke up the next morning. He had sent me like 10 emails about how we can do this business. I didn't know anything about his background, but he had finance, operation, software development experience, and he was an entrepreneur at heart. All the things that I wasn't. Only God, right? Like only God puts that together. And so it was one of those things where it's just like, all right, he wanted to move very quickly. I wanted to be prayerful about it. I also was very aware of the situation I was in with my buddy and his dad in that IT company. I was like, let's kick the tires on the software business. Let's just kind of run it through some things. My now business partner, I was going through this at the time. His uncle was a mergers and acquisition specialist. He has a boutique firm up in New York. And so he's trying to poke holes in our business idea. And finally, after about a month, he goes, I think you guys have something here. Now it comes to the decision of what do I do, right? Like, do I follow this, start to build the software in the background? The worldly kind of the knowledge, says, yeah, keep the money coming in, have a salary and build this business in the background. And then when it's ready, go to your IT company, your buddy, and ask them if they want to be part of it. Because I wanted them to be part of this business. But God said, no, you need to tell them right away, right? And so I remember going to my buddy's dad who owned the IT company and saying, hey, I found a partner for this software that we've been wanting to do, and we're going to do it. But I want you to be part of it. Like, you guys have done a lot for me, and I want you guys to be part of this thing. Let's do it together. They didn't take that very kindly. And I let them know we didn't have a business name. We didn't have anything in place. It was just an idea that we decided we were gonna execute. And so I felt like I honored God with it, because it was like, wait a second, if God put this idea of leading a business one day on my heart 2 years ago, and now it's coming into fruition, the last thing I'm going to do is not follow him, especially in the beginning, on how he wants me to start this thing. So I honored him by bringing it up, and unfortunately they told me that we were going to be competitors, and I had to make up my mind, within 2 weeks of what I wanted to do. And so I wrote my resignation letter over the weekend and sent it to him and cut ties. So now I have no job. We have no new business. We have no name. We have no nothing. But God allowed us to jam about 18 months of development into 6 months in 2016. And we ended up launching. I look back now and I'm like, I have no idea how that actually came together, because we struggle with projects, pulling them together now. And, we've been in business for 8 years. And it's like, how did we start this thing? But we launched at the end of 2016. And it's like, all right, if we get 20, 30, 40, 50 customers first year, at least I can eat, like my business partner had a full-time job and he didn't necessarily have to have additional income coming in. I didn't have any. So I was like, all right, as long as I can feed myself, my wife and I are trying to start a family, but God, decided, he was like, all right, I'm going to give you about 400 customers that first year. So it was at that point we're like, all right, we're on to something. And then, how do you scale it out from there is kind of the story. Before
we get into that, let's, what is HIPAA compliance? Let's go through that so people can understand that a little bit better.
It's boring.
And then what are the biggest, like the 6 months from, quitting your job, those 6 months, like what are the biggest problems that y'all ran into and had to find solutions to?
Yeah, no, good questions.
HIPAA compliance first.
Yeah, HIPAA compliance is really all about patient security, patient data, right? So we're all patients somewhere. So you think about when you go to your dentist's office and they make you fill out all those forms and they've got your name, your email address, your personal address. Some even collect social security numbers. Those are all data points for criminals, right? And we understand the day we live in and how valuable data is. So medical data, so not necessarily just the diagnoses, but the actual medical chart with all of our information is 10 times more valuable on the black market than any credit card information, because you're talking about putting together full data points, stolen identities, not just a stolen credit card. And so it's extremely valuable for criminals, which makes it a high target. And so in the past, Hospitals have been more keen to make sure that their environments are secure because they're the bigger targets, right? Like a lot more medical records, but the criminals have gotten a lot smarter over the years. And I mean, we're hearing about all the time, right? Eye care practices, dental practices being breached. And so HIPAA compliance is a set of laws, or HIPAA is a set of laws and rules that the government has set forth, and they've actually been in place for a long time now, just a large lack of compliance. But to hold what they call covered entities, or we could just call doctors and anybody that's storing sensitive medical information, hold them accountable. And for the longest time, the government didn't really have much teeth behind those laws. What I saw was, I mean, this data is valuable. I know cybersecurity through the IT, like this isn't going away. Like it's only going to be a worse problem as time goes on. And that's ultimately what's happened. And so now there are these new laws coming out with more teeth. And it's just one of those things where one day it's going to be very much regulated like banking and whatnot because of the value behind the data that our chiropractor stores, right? And a chiropractor is not a cybersecurity expert. Yeah. So it's like one of those things where you almost can't expect them to meet these regulations without some help. So that's where Abyde comes in and allows them to implement compliance programs that meet government regulations. And if you're doing that, much like when meeting tax regulations, you have to have the right documentation. Abyde allows them very easily, like TurboTax, to pull that together without being an expert. Yeah. Right.
So I'm assuming the software that you built in those 6 months to what the software is now is just like on steroids, right?
Yeah, totally different. So you asked about the challenges as well. I mean, I think getting what was in my mind into a software, right, was a challenge for sure, because it's like, I know what it needs to do, but I'm not a software expert. We're dealing with developers who are not of American nationality. And so there's a language barrier there. There are a lot of challenges. And when you're talking about regulations and laws, like you have to hit certain standards. And so that was definitely a challenge. I think just who do I go to sell this thing? Like, how do I even start, right? Like, I did the spray and pray. I did every approach you could possibly imagine, because for 6 months I didn't have a job and I wasn't a software developer. So our developers were developing the product overnight. I'd get back the iterations in the morning. By 11 o'clock, I've gotten them all my feedback. Now what else do I need to work on in the business? What took the most priority was, how can I make sure when this thing launches that someone's going to hand over their credit card?
Yeah.
And that was it. It was just a hustle approach. Probably wasn't the most efficient approach, but I just knew if I just kept running and I didn't stop, and then the product did what I needed to do, I could sell it.
What would you have done different those 6 months, knowing what you know now?
Just have a plan, a better plan. Again, just like you could have a business plan, but is that your go-to-market plan? Like, are you actually able to execute on that? It's all great in theory, right? A lot of times, but just a better plan. I think as well, I was very naive in what we were building, and I showed it to some people early on that I felt had good intentions, and they took that and utilized what information I gave or what I showed them about our software to kind of maybe rip off or do some things on their own. So just maybe being a little bit more aware of who I was talking to and what I was saying early on about what we were going to do.
Yeah. And then the first year you had 400 customers?
We had about 400.
And what y'all end last year on?
I think we have about 4,200, 4,300.
Okay.
Yeah.
At what point did you have that, probably early on, that aha moment of this is going to work?
Maybe in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't know. I totally hear the question. Yeah. I think we all, as successful business owners, understand there's a level of urgency that and kind of that doubt. I think of Baker Mayfield. I think he holds on to the doubt that he's received over the years. Can you do it again? Right? Can you do it again? And that, I think that's what drives me. So I don't know if maybe in the last 4 or 5 months, I've gotten to this point as you don't have, talking to myself, you don't have to be as urgent.
Yeah.
Money is coming in, cash flow is good, right? The numbers of the business are good. What drove my urgency so much earlier on is not private equity backed, right? No VC back, like bootstrapped. And so it was like every dollar mattered. And so that created the urgency. But I was to say, like, in the sense of like, when did I know we had something special and that this could be a lot bigger than probably I ever imagined, was probably the middle of the next year. So probably about a year and a half in, probably about the middle of 2018 was our renewal rate. That told me if people liked it and used it and saw value in it, because it was great. I knew I could sell it, but could we get people to use it and then renew? The trajectory, the access of our growth is completely dependent upon our renewal percentage. And so there's a big difference in my mind of 60% renewal versus 95% renewal. I didn't know where we were going to fall. And so it was about middle of 2018 where we were probably trending at that time at like a 97, 98% renewal rate. I was like, all right, people enjoy using this. They see the value in it, and they'll continue to use it for years to come. Like, we've got something here now. How do we scale it out?
You know, I think all business owners want to scale, quicker and bigger than they are, scaling. Even though that you've built an incredible business, obviously you've wanted to scale more. What kind of pain points have you ran into that have not allowed you to scale quicker?
Cash. That's the major player, right? If you have an unlimited bank account, you can make more mistakes. You can take more risks.
In the software side or the sales side?
On the sales side, okay. just a little bit more cushion.
To add payroll, to pay them, and
to bring them on, and our product is very low dollar. I mean, you're talking about a couple $1,000s a year. We're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars. So, with our salespeople, they've got to come on, they've got to be trained right, and they got to execute and be successful or contribute quickly, or else there's a lot that goes out at that point. So. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest maybe struggle there early on was balancing, and we weren't bringing on senior level sales reps. Yeah. So balancing, trying to train and onboard these people, but also hold them to a standard that, we frankly couldn't afford.
I love the story. Tell the story of where you found one of your first, and then he was actually really good sales reps.
One of the best we had. Yeah. It was a recommendation, but he was a clubhouse attendant, for lack of a better term, for the single A Phillies, like low A ball Phillies here in Clearwater. We used to say, we took him from washing underwear to slinging HIPAA deals. But yeah, I mean, he was the perfect person for that time in our organization. It was like all we had was an idea that we could sell people on, and it's like one of those things, like, I promise that if you sell, I'll take care of you financially. And yeah, so you're not hiring the best of the best out there. So how can you scale something where you have really thin margin for error, but then also making sure you're pouring into people and giving them at least a legit opportunity to do their job well before you pull the plug?
You've already mentioned my next question, but you bootstrapped Abyde. You didn't raise any money, no private equity, no VC. Why'd you choose that route?
It was a philosophy that we decided in the beginning with my business partner and our advisor, but you hang on as long as you can to the equity, right? I back then we talked about how every dollar we spend, we're really spending $10, because we thought one day this thing could be valued at 10x. And so that just got ingrained into my mind. So it's one of those things for us, that's what was best, right? Like there were so many things we had to figure out. And, we even said in the beginning, someone could drop $1 million on our doorstep. We don't know what to do with it. We needed accounts, right? And we needed people to sign up. And even now we're at the point where it's, we want to try to hang on to this thing as long as we can. The value continues to go up. We're the ones reaping the reward of it. And not only that, but we also want to reward those around us that are helping us. And so it's like, if we're starting to give away percentages to private equity and stuff like that, it just takes away from what we can do for our people. And, my partner and I have been very adamant since the beginning of
it's still just you and Zummy?
Yeah, a 50-50. But now our two CRO and COO It's not official yet, but the ink's not dry. But yeah, they'll be owners. They'll have a percentage one day, and it's what we set out to do.
So I'm looking forward to your answer on this next question. To start this, one of the things that for all entrepreneurs, and myself included, and definitely you, what's normal about the successful route that we've taken is we've taken substantial risk. How did you handle the uncertainty and the risk in starting Abyde? You got your family planning, no job, your wife, was she bought in? Obviously she was.
Yeah.
So how did you handle that uncertainty and risk?
I think my faith played a huge part in that. That is literally faith, right? God telling you something's going to happen and you not having the steps in front of you, but you abiding or obeying, right, in what he says and trusting that he's going to get you through it. So that was the main thing. It was that word that I received when I read that book. And again, I thought I was going to be a leader in the IT company that I was working in, but God, he took a right-hand turn and was like, no, it's going to be yours. You're going to start, you're going to build it, you and your partner, right? But yes, that and my wife, I'd tear up just talking about it, but just to have someone in your corner, and then not just someone, but the person that you're walking life with, right? The person that, I committed my life with, to be bought in on the riskiest decision at the worst possible time in our lives because of our faith together and what God had called us to do is everything. It literally is everything. And to up until yesterday, right, or even this morning, we're always talking about Abyde. We're always talking about challenges in the business, or, she's encouraging me through certain things, or praying for me, or correcting me gently, which is really nice.
Sometimes hard.
It's hard, man. But honestly, she's the wise, because she's not in it. Her advice is very, very wise. She's not always correct. Love you, baby. But she's very wise and usually is correct, even though she's not in the business. And that's how I think God set this up for that. So yeah, it was her. You have to have the support. Even now, the days are sometimes long and tough. And, the challenges we have now aren't the same challenges, but they almost feel bigger and weightier now. Back in the day, it may have been, every cent or every dollar, those challenges. But, now it's leadership challenges or team challenges or, threshold challenges or internal challenges that are still there. That stuff never goes away, regardless of how much revenue you have coming in. So you got to have someone there to support you.
From the 400 customers to now the 4,000 plus customers, and just knowing your business from hanging out, your business has evolved and it's much more than HIPAA compliant software now. What have you added from the software standpoint, and do you foresee any additions in the future?
Yeah, for sure. We were dumb enough in the beginning to call ourselves Continual Compliance Solutions because we didn't want to put ourselves in a box with HIPAA, right? The name of the software was Abyde, and then you make enough cold calls saying, hey, this is Matt from Continual Compliance Solutions. You just say, all right, we'll go shorter. So we always had plans for going beyond HIPAA, but it was also my concern of I knew HIPAA. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know OSHA. I knew HIPAA. And so we stayed in there for a while, and then eventually we ventured out in 2000 and had to have been 21, I believe. So we've had the OSHA product now for 3 or 4 years. And that's been received extremely well, and we're extremely happy with it. But yeah, you name compliance for the market that we're in, medical practices, small independent medical practice environment, there's a lot of compliance that they have to follow. And so our software definitely allows for just different content, same structure, same processes, same feel, just different content depending on.
Explain OSHA real quick and the requirements. And
yeah, OSHA is, so HIPAA is about patient data safety. OSHA is about employee safety. And so protecting your employees, under the OSHA laws, as an employer, you're obligated to provide a safe and healthy work environment. And if not, there are repercussions and ramifications that come with it. So, there's training involved, there's documentation. It just mimics HIPAA very much. And so again, as an independent medical practice, you're not an OSHA expert. There are state laws you got to look at. There are federal laws you have to look at. It's convoluted. It's complex. So, for us to step in, it's been a relief to a lot of our customers. So I would say probably 50 or 60% of our customers now utilize both products.
And then overall the business, like what percentage is like HIPAA and what percentage is like OSHA? Or just like both?
Yeah, I would say probably about 55 to 60% of our customers have both products. Maybe 1%, probably not even. I don't think we probably have 42 only OSHA customers. It's usually HIPAA that gets them in the door.
Yeah.
And then they add OSHA, but there's probably a few hundred just HIPAA customers.
I love the videos on like Instagram Reels where it's like not OSHA approved and it's like some like, a ladder on a ladder.
You see it all the time. It's scary. We've seen it all. I'll just say that, right? On both sides, even HIPAA, right? It's like you just have a patient network or an internet connection that's open to all the patients. Like that's the same network you use to schedule my appointments on?
I see some of your LinkedIn sometimes, like, or not just yours, but also just to buy the company or any of your employees. And like, what's like one of the since you started the business, one of the craziest like fines someone has received because they didn't follow either OSHA or HIPAA compliance?
I mean, something that like blows people's minds are when doctors get fined by the Office for Civil Rights for HIPAA violations because they respond to patient reviews on like Google or Yelp. That is like disclosing, even if as a doctor, you're not even allowed to disclose that person came to your practice. Even if that person says, hey, I came there on December 2nd, it was the worst experience I've ever had in a medical practice. Like there are laws that keep the response at bay when it comes to the covered entity. And so they can only share so much. And that just blows people's mind. They're like, and I get it, right? As a business owner, you want to protect your business, but there's the right and wrong way to do it in terms of the government's eyes. So, we've custody battles, right? All comes up a lot with HIPAA compliance. I don't want an ex-spouse to be able to get access to a child's medical records for whatever reason. So there's just a lot of nuanced areas where HIPAA, puts.
What's the biggest fine you've seen?
Biggest fine that's ever been given, I believe, is over 16 million. That will be changed though. My guess is anybody who's listening to this, you probably were affected by the Change Healthcare breach. Did you get a notification about that?
I hope not.
2/3 of the United States was affected. It was something crazy, and that will be the biggest fine because they've been negligent throughout the process. So, United Healthcare owns Change Healthcare. They were breached, and
so spend a couple thousand with Abyde or risk $1 million lawsuits.
It's not insurance, right? But it's assurance that you're going to have what you need when you need it. So it is like insurance, and it saves you some money.
Are y'all still 100% on your
pass rate, audit pass rate? Nobody that I've ever worked with, even when I was doing the consulting, when investigated, had ever paid a penny or failed an audit in the government's mind. So it's one of those things we feel very confident that if you sign up for our software and you follow the notifications, we tell them what to do and when to do it, they can have peace of mind, then just never stress over it again.
So the podcast being Successful DNA, like one of my like dreams and wishes of the podcast is that people that hear your story or hear others, stories like yours, and they take action. Because that's what you did. You had a vision from God, and you take action. It's vision, action, vision, action. A lot of people, like you said, they have $1 million ideas, they don't take action. I think that comes down to the DNA inside of people. So I want to dig into that a little bit. Like, what are some of the core traits that you and Zummy, your business partner, have that have allowed you to be successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it comes from your upbringing. If that goes into the DNA, right? Like, how you're created, how you're made. In my family growing up, if we did anything, we did it to excellence. Like, you just weren't allowed to just go through the motions of anything. And at the time, I didn't like it. But looking back, it's like, that's what set me up. I think that was what was so disappointing to my parents in college for me, right? It's like, that was probably the one thing that I just didn't do to my maximum ability. But yeah, I wasn't the most talented, all those things, but because I did the little things right, I was listening to, to my coaches and they just, it was about doing things the right way, always doing it the right way, regardless of who's looking, who's not looking. You do, how you do one thing is how you do anything. And I look back, and again, that was not something that like my parents like talked about a lot. It was the way they raised us. They didn't allow us to make excuses. They didn't allow us to go outside of those boundaries without something being said. And I think, Zumwalt, my business partner, he has those same traits of like, if we're going to do it, like we're going to do it well. Like we're not going to just go through the motions. We will not settle for mediocrity. Like success is in the journey for us. And so like we don't necessarily get caught up on the end result, right? Because if the end result, we hit our goal, but during the journey, we didn't do all we could do to get there. Guess what? The goal was too low. And that means we can even do better next time. And I think for a lot of people, that's tough to comprehend. Like, it's like, well, wait a second. You told me that this was good. And if I did this, it was, and it's like, well, yeah, but how you did it is almost important as to what you did. And so for us, it's always trying to find ways to make it better and just do things better. There are a lot of times when you do that and you evaluate yourself and you go, we're doing things well. Like that is set up correctly. But there are a lot of times that you're like, man, we were okay with that. Like, I know we got the end result we wanted, but the process was not what we're looking for. We need a better swing. We both play golf. Just because the ball goes in the hole does not mean you took a good swing, right? Like, your 100-yard shot that never got off the ground that hit the flag and went in is not as good.
Your ball goes in the hole?
No, not as beautiful as my little pitching wedge, right? That is 4 feet away. But yeah, the whole no pictures on the scorecard doesn't apply to me because it is about the process that got the end result. Because if it can be made better, then we're going to make it better.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing you always say when playing golf, to elaborate on that, is like, and I forget the exact way you say it, but like you're okay with like just making good contact. It might go a little left, it might go a little right, but I think because that consistency gets you to where you want to go eventually. At
some point, right? Yeah, like it's just keep taking good swings.
Yeah,
the rest will work itself out. Like if in golf, if I'm making good ball contact, that's almost all I care about. Right? Like I may not score well, but if I'm making good contact, because I know at some point I will start scoring well, right? Yeah. I may hit you can hit the world's greatest drive and have it hit a sprinkler head and end up in the woods. And you have to hit around a tree. That doesn't mean you hit a bad drive, So it's like, I'll take the odds, right? I'm playing the odds. I'm playing the percentages that is not always going to work. We're working with a sales consultant right now, and he's awesome. And he says, lean on dependable strategies and processes. Dependable, not foolproof, right? Doesn't mean it's always going to work. But know that if you have a process that is going to get you to the most desired result as best as possible, the most amount of times when you have opportunities. It's not always going to happen, but if you have the right process, it's going to get you there more often than not.
You mentioned it when you're growing up, and one thing that I really focus on just in my life, and especially raising my boys, is like, I just want to be the best version of myself, right? We only get one shot at this. We get one life. That's all we get. No mulligans, like on our golf game. And so, and that comes from, my health, my fitness, my lifestyle I live, the business that I run, the husband that I want to be, the father that I want to be. Like, I could care less about what my sons do as long as the best is the expectation. And that's how I'll always, I don't care if they go pro, I don't care what they, as long as they give their best.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I have 3 rules. I coach a really competitive under 5 soccer team. I have 3 rules as coach. Listen to your coach, try your best, and have fun. And in reality, it's just 2 rules. Because if you do the first 2, you're probably going to be good. And guess what? When you're good and you're winning, you're having fun. Like there is, I'm not ashamed to say that. It's not like, we're going to listen to our coach, we're going to try our best, and we're going to stink and have fun. It's like, if we do the first 2, we're actually going to be probably pretty good. And then the fun takes care of us. Who doesn't have fun when you're winning? Yeah. So, and winning is not everything. It's the process. Yeah. But you got to give me the first 2. You got to be open to coaching, and you got to try your best. Yeah. Rest takes care of itself.
One thing, kind of going to that, like the 1, 2, 3s of of the sports world. South Carolina's worst football coach, probably, Will Muschamp. He did have three things that I actually liked. It was effort, toughness, and discipline were his three things. And I think that relates to your life and business and everything you want to do. Like in our business, if we give like crazy and undeniable and supernatural effort, and if we have toughness and we have discipline, we're going to go through some bad times.
Right.
There's going to be you're going to have some perseverance in this world, and then the discipline behind it, to not get caught up in the, kind of like, I think there's a happy medium. I don't agree with it. With Nick Saban, after he was National championship, what are you going to do tonight? We're going to focus on next season. No, like we're going to celebrate a little bit, but there's that happy medium.
Good
right?
and bad. Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about it. Our three pillars in our organization are effort, organization, and skill. You got to give me the effort.
Yeah.
Then you got to be organized, and then we'll teach you the skill. Yeah, but it all starts with effort for sure.
The setbacks you've had, in the past, golly, 8 years now. You've had Abyde 8 or 9?
Yeah.
2016?
End of 2000, yeah. So spring of 2016 was kind of when it all started.
So 8-9 years. Like the setbacks you've had, how did you get through them? And like, how do you continue to get through them as you'll have more and more setbacks and more perseverance that you have to have?
You got to have a short memory. You got to, again, I kind of think about with sports, right? It's like what happens when you have a bad game? Like you evaluate, right? You look at yourself. What could I have done better? What did I do well? What did I not do well? What can I change the next time I'm in that situation? How can I prepare myself better? What internal changes do I need to make? And so I just think about like that business as well. Anytime there's been a challenging time, it causes me to look at myself. I'm the leader, right? So if like something isn't sitting well with me within the organization, or we're going through some strife, like A, I probably contributed to it somehow, and B, I can help us get out of it, right? Like I'm the one that can really do a lot about it. And so like you a lot of times I have the tendency of wanting to just like, it'll kind of take care of itself. And you have to address it, right? Like you have to address the negativity when there are negative things going around. So being real with yourself, I think, is a big thing. And then committing or recommitting yourself to the things that you are convicted on and moving forward. Business is business. Unfortunately, people use that to do certain things, say certain things, act a certain way. So, you can feel burned, you can feel hurt, or you can think about how can I make this better for the next time, and make sure I don't put myself back in the same situation. And then what am I going to continue to do? A lot of times my wife has pulled my head out of the sand or maybe out of the water, so to speak, and like, get your head up and lead the people that are there. Like lead the people that are there the way that they need to be led. And a lot of stuff takes care of itself after that, right? Like a lot of times I'll want to go fix the problem. And a lot of times I just need to go be with the people, and that helps fix it. And so there's no like secret recipe, but being or being confident in your convictions of the things that I'm not going to waver from, no matter maybe what other people think or say, whether they thought it was a good idea or bad idea. I'm going to be confident in who I am and go all in.
To listeners, if you had to pick one thing that would be essential for people to get ahead in life, like one mindset thing, what would it be?
I can't tell my story. Like I can't say any of it without being like God gave me the idea. So it's just like, that would be, I lean in to a relationship there, because he will blow your mind and give a 2.17 baseball player a business idea that has turned into this, right? Like other than the grace of God, grit. Yeah. I did that present. When I did that presentation for y'all, which was awesome. That's what made me, I forget what you challenged me with to talk about, but that's what I ended up talking about. And that was through that process that I realized, like, yeah, it's grit. It's being able to overcome challenges that we just talked about, have the perseverance to continue to go, to get up, dust off, and move forward. So many people want to play the victim mentality these days. And we all have an excuse. We're all going through junk. We all have an excuse to quit, to give up, not work as hard. Woe is me. the people that get ahead in life are the people that can roll through those trials, those storms, and persevere. And that's it, right? Like half the battle is just continuing to wake up and go the next day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like have grit, be convicted on something. Don't worry about what anybody else says. I mean, how many people have told you this short-term rental is a bad idea, dude?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what's going to happen? Like, okay, I'm convicted on, I'm going to keep going, you know? Like my dad, as awesome as he is, my brother, as awesome as they are, their first instinct, initial instinct to me telling them I'm going to go start a company is like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, I don't know. What are you going to do about X, Y, and Z? And it's just like, you can let people speak that into you, or you can be convicted and actually get things done.
I agree. You know, and that's even, like, obviously we believe it in our heart, but it's also like written in the Bible. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived the plans I have for you. Like you couldn't even think about it, and I couldn't even think about 2017 to what our life is now. Like couldn't even think of it.
You were selling fundraising coupons
Until when we were slinging those coupons.
I mean, you're doing well, but
yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Like he's got something so special in store for all of us. It will blow all of our minds.
And it's not just, and to add on to that, like the visions and like the businesses we've created are straight from him, not just visions that were so good that we created them. Because we've also, you know, I mean, think of all the visions we've had, and it goes into grit. Like the team lasted me all the time. You know, we have 12 successful separate businesses right now. You know, I've had 100 ideas. You know, and so and some of them I've acted on and they've failed.
Right.
Doesn't mean I'm not 12 for 12.
Right.
You know, and so kind of going back to what I said earlier is to vision and act on it and act on it aggressively.
And being okay with failing.
Yeah.
Like being okay with like, hey, this may not work. There's no guarantee. Like if you're waiting for the perfect time to do it, it ain't ever going to happen. No perfect time to get married. No perfect time to have kids. No perfect time to start a business.
That's what I love about baseball, and I think has like really played a huge part in my development in business, is what I couldn't stand about baseball. You could have a doubleheader, and you could go 4 for 4 the first game with 4 home runs. Next game, 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Like, what just happened?
And
like,
you're only 500 at that point, right? You're getting 50. If I brought home a 50% on a test, you're failing, right?
And so that's what's like great about business is like there's ups and downs, you know, and things can go from 1 month, or 1 quarter to the next quarter, and things are down. You got to figure it out, and so that's what's like great about baseball and experience, and in sports in general. Sports and business go like.
And baseball specific, I mean, baseball is a grind, right? Like it's every day, it's ups and downs, it's percentages, it's numbers, like it's everything you said. I say, yesterday's base hits do nothing for today's batting average.
Yeah.
Like that stinks. Yeah. I always say like the worst part of my month is the beginning of the month when I hit refresh on Salesforce and all of our dials go back to zero. Because it's like, oh man, we got to get it going again, but that's what happens when you want to build something great. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. It's consistency over time. Let's
dig in a little bit. Work-life balance. What is that now? And then what was it? I'm assuming, I may be wrong, like in 2016, 2017, you were having to sacrifice a little more than you are now. Yeah. What were some of those sacrifices, personal sacrifices you had to make in order to grow your business? And like, what's your work-life balance now?
I was just talking about this with somebody. I forget when it was, just the other day. I was super blessed. I thought when starting Abyde that I was going to have to travel a bunch. And I did. I did travel more than I travel now, but it was not a bunch. We had just had our Madison in 2017, and we launched, basically the beginning of that year. So it was like, I remember I went, I had to take a trip 2 weeks after she was born, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was 2 weeks after your firstborn's born, but I didn't have to. That being said, there were a ton of sacrifices. I mean, financially, we risked everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I look back without getting into specifics. I mean, there was money in our account that it didn't exceed 2 figures. I'll just say that. Not 9 figures, 2 figures, right? Yeah. So like that was like the December of when we launched. And so we had to sacrifice a lot. We had to sacrifice things that we were doing. We couldn't buy a house, when we first got married. But that being said, like I never sacrificed my priorities. And that hasn't changed throughout all of it, where it's, it's my relationship with God, it's my relationship with my wife, it's my relationship with my kids, then it is Abyde. Now, does that mean that I can't go on a road trip 2 weeks after my daughter's born? No, like I had at that time, at that weekend, right? The priority was the business. I had to go away. So it's, we say one of our values at Abyde is wise work-life priorities, not work-life balance, because you're never going to get balance. No. It's never going to be balanced, right? Just like that. It's like I had to go away for a weekend, away from my new family. So there was no balance there, right? But when I can't, so that's why it's like when you're home, you be at home. And I've struggled with that, no doubt. And I know you do too. I think any business owner would say that, or really probably any professional that takes their stuff seriously, right? Like it's tough to cut the cord on the way home and just leave it here in the office and be present at home. So I know I have sacrificed at times that, right? Like not being present at home. But that being said, like I don't feel like we had to sacrifice like a lot. Like there were things in the beginning, like, as a married couple or as a young family, we weren't able to do because we just, even now it's like we're just now starting to kind of build ourselves up a little bit because a lot went right back into the business. But again, like never went without. And it's just a lot less sacrifice, honestly, than I thought.
Yeah. And that's been great, about building a home team. Man, I'll travel maybe 4 or 5 nights this year. That's it. And so
that's awesome.
Like I'll, make 98%, 99% of bath and bed, rock my kids to sleep, give them a bath, lay with them while they fall asleep, whatever it is. So, they're definitely blessed with that.
It's huge, man. And that's what, like, I've, from moving out of the stage of working in the business or on the business to moving out of the stage of working in the business to on the business, in the stage of life that my girls are in at 7 and 5, in those ages, and I want to be around, like, I don't get here when everybody else gets here. Like, and I'm very aware of the perception, but I am extremely engaged with the organization. A lot of times I'm on calls in the morning. I may be working out, but I dedicate my mornings, and I just realized, kind of stumbled on this, but my 3 F's, right, is my faith, my family, and my fitness in the morning.
Oh, not football?
Not football. That's at night. But yeah, in the morning, that's like what I dedicate my time to. And I'm not an early morning person. So it's like, you can tell me to wake up at 5. I'm not going to be a good person that day. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned, it's like, I've got my rhythm, and I've got to get in my devotion. I got to be around for my girls, drop them off at the bus stop, have conversation with my wife, be present there. I have learned, I sacrificed my fitness. Honestly, like that may be something that I had to sacrifice the most, is probably working out, because that was the first thing that went when you early mornings or late nights. But now that's a priority, because I'm not going to be my best self if I don't have that. I'm not going to be around.
Yeah.
Like I got to take care of that, right? Like I got to make sure that I'm in this thing for the long haul. And so, yeah, I may get in a little bit after everybody here at the office, but we don't miss a beat. And that's a wise work-life priority for me now, is to be at home and to make sure I'm taking care of those things before I get to the office, because I am so much of a better leader when I have the Holy Spirit on me. Yeah. If I'm not getting in the Word in the morning because I'm too tired, I'm trying to fit in a bunch of different things and get in the office so it looks good.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm about. I'm about results, making sure it happens.
Yeah, I finally got to a point, really recently, within the past 3 to 4 months, that like I block off every single morning from 9 to 10:30, 11, because the businesses, they can run without me, and they can grow without me. And so that was the goal, right? We want our businesses to not just run without us, but also grow without us.
Yeah.
And so, with the kids waking up at the crack of dawn at between 5 and 6 o'clock, that could mean I wake up at 4 o'clock, but I'm like you, I'm not going to be a good husband or a good dad. No one's going to want to be around me.
Yeah.
So that's been good. I feel a lot better, now.
When you come in here,
yeah,
you're probably, you're better,
yeah.
I'm sure, at that point, right?
As we close up, there's a lot of people that you and I know, a lot of people I know independently, a lot of people you know independently, from ages, teenagers to 60, 70 years old, that feel stuck, and where they're at, don't have any, maybe hope, You know, maybe there's some stress, maybe there's some anxiety, some fear. What would you say to those people?
I've been there. I know what that feels like. I've been there recently. Like, I mean, that's what, like, you can, at any stage you can get there. You talked earlier about, I think you were talking about motivation, right? And to me, there's a difference, and I forget what you were saying specifically. I apologize. I wasn't listening. But like, to me, there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is external, usually like money motivated things, right? Like I want to buy a house. I'm motivated to do that. I want to get a 6-pack, right? Like I'm going to do abs. Motivated. What happens with motivation? When you reach the goal, you quit a lot of times. Or when the going gets tough because the reward isn't worth it at the time to continue to push through, you quit, right? So you either quit when you get to the goal or you quit before the goal. Where to me, inspiration, I learned this from like Craig Rochelle, talks about how inspiration comes from within. Literally inspire in spirit, right? Like from within your spirit. So like to move past a point of being stuck, in my opinion, you have to be doing something that you have inspiration for. Mm-hmm. Now, the inspiration doesn't have to be about what you're like. I'm not necessarily inspired. Maybe I am now. I get inspiration from, developing an awesome software that, people see benefit in using and see value. But that's almost more motivation, right? That's like the clap. Hey, good job on developing the software. The inspiration is the vision that God gave me. And anytime I get stuck, like that's what I go back to, like what it inspired me to do this in the first place. What gave me the passion to walk away from everything that I knew at the time and leverage or risk everything, our entire future as a family. It was what he inspired within me that was the catalyst to even take the first step. So that has to be the same fire that when the going gets tough, that's what I tap into. Because if I was just motivated by a number, I would have walked away a long time ago. This thing is more valuable than I ever thought it would be. So it's not a number. I don't want something to externally motivate me. My motivation comes from that vision. Now, within that vision is making sure that I steward the business well and my family. And so, I don't want to come to work every day so that I'm collecting a paycheck. It's like, I want to come to work every day so that one day my girls, when they become 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, they look at me and they go, Dad, you were at home all the time. How did you build this while you were at home? Like I have a lot of friends that their parents, their dad was never home because he was doing it for work. He was doing it for them under the guise of doing it for them, making sure that there was enough money coming in or they were going to have money when they got older. It's like, to me, that inspiration comes from my family seeing me prioritize the right things at the right time while having success, right? And that word is so open-ended, right? Like, to me, success is not a dollar figure either. So it comes from inspiration. You got to be inspired.
I think too, just, knowing, now knowing more about your story, for someone who feels stuck, unsure of their next steps, you felt that way when you walked into your buddy's dad's office and you gave, hey, I want to do it together. And he said, nah, you're competing with us. You got to choose. How stuck did you feel then? But I think what you did is what we've said before. You had the vision. You could have sat on that vision.
Yeah.
But you took action.
Next right thing. I talk about that all the time, right? If you don't know what to do, what is the next right thing to do? And then you just keep doing the next right thing.
You got to take some kind of action. You can't just sit there.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. If you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. So if you're in this wallowing, if you just stay there, you're going to continue to wallow.
If you weren't building Abyde, we got 2 more questions. If you weren't building Abyde, what other business or industry might you explore?
Dude, I'm telling you, God prepped me. You didn't prep me for this thing, but God did. I've thought about all these questions I've thought about recently.
That's
I
funny.
literally thought if someone asked me that question, it was last night playing Madden, I would be a sports broadcaster.
Dude, when you want to get beaten Madden, you let me know, okay?
When I want to get beaten Madden, I just play the computer on all Madden. I've lost 7 in a row.
So a sports broadcaster?
That's would be something inside of me that I would just love to do.
Football?
I always wanted to do. I could do football. I think baseball would be cool. I mean, playing summer ball in Virginia, they let me be up in the booth on the radio, and then I go down and warm up and go in the game and stuff like that. So yeah, I like radio. I like television productions. I'll probably be like a sports broadcaster. Me and Kurt, on the calls, Kurt Parker on the ones and twos. He wanted to be, Joe Buck.
Yeah,
I could have been his Troy Aikman.
What we'll do is we'll create like Harborside Sports, like a high school, and then you can do
high fly ball deep to right field, back to the track, to the wall, it's gone.
That's really good, actually.
Another one for Elliott Caldwell.
Oh man, you're nut. All right, I lied. I said 2 more questions. Now I have 2 more questions. What's next for you and Abyde, and the new goals this year or projects on the horizon?
We were just talking about that this morning. We're in scale mode. So we kind of just throttled down middle half of last year with some certain initiatives and projects for different reasons, and now we are looking to build back. We have our team now is the same size as it was like when we were back in 2019, 18. So we've like the amount of we need people, we need resources.
Why'd you just go back?
For a number of reasons. We've lost some people for some good reasons. We lost some people for some bad reasons. We tried to scale a certain way, and it just the room for margin was super razor thin, and it just wasn't. We weren't seeing what we wanted to see, and so we just kind of had to, move on. I think from maybe some people that we loved as people. And maybe we hung on to them maybe a little bit too long just because we loved them as people and we wanted it to work out, but maybe it wasn't the best strategy business-wise. So just kind of learn from that. And so now going forward, just trying to figure out like what is the way to scale. And we do have a really good opportunity that kind of takes us out of our ways we've been doing things and adds another channel of business for us that would allow us to scale a little bit differently than we tried in the past. And it seems like a great model. So that's the big plan, is to kind of throttle back up starting now. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 jobs out there we're trying to hire for at the time, but get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seats, and then just execute with some of these new strategies.
And then along with that, like, we won't get into like specifics of like revenue or anything. Let's go with number of clients. Like, you're in the mid 4,000s now. What are y'all's goals to end the year on?
So, that's a good question. We have our exec retreat next week, so we'll come up with some of these number KPIs that we want to land on. I think the goal would be to grow anywhere between. I mean, I don't mind throwing out revenue figures. Anywhere between 25 and 30-40% this year. 35-40% would be nice. So we did just under 6 million. So puts us just over 7 million. Between, call it 7 and 8, right? Somewhere between there.
You've all grown every year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, last year was our lowest growth year over year. I think we grew 23%. So yeah, I mean, early on it's easy. You
keep growing 23% every year, you're going to be okay.
You can be all right, but it gets harder and harder every year, right? Yeah. So it's just like one of those things where you need the new business to make up for the renewals or the those that churn.
What's renewal at now?
We're about a 91% renewal rate. We're light on that team. That team is very bare at the moment, so we're trying to hire them some help. And we know that when that happens, we're going to get proactive and raise that number.
You'll have a lot of competition?
A few. Yeah, a few. I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, we don't feel like anybody really compares to what we have, but I know most businesses say that. Yeah. But yeah, like you can count them on one hand. Yeah. That's for sure. There's not many.
All right, last question, even though I said 2 questions when I already asked 7 questions. But the wholesome question to end it, what's the legacy you hope to leave, both personally and through Abyde?
Ooh. Why do you ask the legacy question? I'm going to answer your question with a question. Is that like a normal question?
No. That's just, I mean, I'm big on legacy. I mean, I think about it all the time, like, when I'm on my deathbed and at my funeral, what are people going to say about me? And,
that's your legacy.
Yeah. That's
and it could be good or bad.
Yeah. More importantly, what's Kylie going to say about me? What are my kids going to say about me? It was funny. I was talking to Kurt, was the last, interviewee that we had on. And, he does a lot of funerals. And he was saying there's 3 types of, dads and fathers and husbands in this world. One, dad wasn't around. We don't really know dad, like whatever. A mixture of like what I'm about to say, the third, but dad was around. Dad was great. Dad was awesome, but he was okay. Yeah, everything was good. or like dad was freaking awesome. And dad was the man, and dad was around, and husband was great, and husband was around. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's my legacy.
That's it. I mean, I kind of, so I love legacy. That's why I asked you that. I was first introduced, so I'm going off a little tangent here for you, but I was first introduced to legacy at Florida State because that's what Florida State's about. I mean, they had a baseball coach and a football coach that both stayed there for like 40 years and were the most successful coaches in their sport. And that like permeates throughout the whole campus. I mean, the new College of Business building their building, it's called Legacy Hall. And so that was when I was first introduced to it. And it never really stuck with me until I started Abyde, where I started thinking about these things. And so like our full team meeting, full company meeting on once a month on the first Tuesday of each month is called Legacy Tuesday. And we've been doing that for, I don't know, six years or so, where, you know, we go around and talk about everything, but there's always a message at the end where we're focused on building our legacies, right? And we talk about, well, what is legacy? Legacy is not what you leave for somebody. Legacy is what you leave in somebody. Like you said, what are they going to say about you? Like when you walk away, how do they feel? How are you making them feel? And so legacy is big for me. And I think I, you know, more or less answered the question when I was talking about like, what do I want my girls to say as they, you know, get into their late teens is like, holy cow, Dad. Like I had like I knew about Abyde, Dad, and I knew you were passionate about it. And you wore your t-shirts around the house all the time. And we talked about Abyde, but I didn't know. Like I didn't know that that's what you were building. I didn't know it was that big or that successful or you had that many employees or, you know, all, you know, any of the victories that come with what we have going on business wise, because I put them first and I made them feel like I didn't have a job. And I made sure my wife was a priority and that she felt valued and seen and that they saw that. Like what you said, it's like, yeah, I honestly, like I care most about what my kids and what my wife would say about me than anything else. And that's, you know, I answer to the Lord, but next I answer to them. Like I got to make sure they have what they need and I set them up for success. So that's it. That's my inspiration and that's the legacy I want to leave.
Cool. Well, man, that was a fun, you know, hour plus. I hope you're going to inspire a lot of people, man. And your story is freaking incredible. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thank you, man. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I can't believe you've been doing this all this time down here, just down the hall. I should have came in and wrecked it or something.
Don't do that. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate it.
Yep.